Okay, so we just went live, so everything's recording now. As y'all know, our topic was that teachers are actors of the state, yet they also have rights as citizens of the United States. So we're to answer to what extent can teachers wear religious dress and jewelry without offending the establishment clause. So I know we decided that we would talk just briefly about what was discussed in the textbook, even though it's not too clear and there's not too much precedent on it. But I know Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act prevents the discrimination on religion for employment on race and color, sex, national origin, and religion. And that school districts have to accommodate teachers wearing reasonable wearing of religious clothing, as well of accessories and all that type of stuff, unless it's undue hardship upon the school district.
So is this where I can actually jump in and talk to, or? Okay, good. More interactive and not scripted. Okay, I also want to point out too that this case is really about the Amendment 1, and I kind of want to read that because I don't know it by heart, and I don't want to mess it up. But you know, Amendment 1 states that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. And that really kind of talks about that establishment clause. It's in there where it clearly states Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion, as well as the free exercise clause, nor prohibiting the free exercise thereof. And it also kind of talks about that free speech. And to me, those kind of get a little gray. I'm turning.
Well, I looked for a couple of cases, and I found one that I felt was really interesting, considering that hearing about some of the Muslims and everything in the news and on the internet, and their the headdress. I've seen that there's supposed to be some places where the headdress is going to be outlawed in some school districts. And so when I saw this case, I started reading it, but and I'm probably going to say her name wrong, but Reardon, and the school district was in Pennsylvania. And so she became a devout Muslim, I guess is how you would say it. In I have a date, but I don't remember what it was. But it was several years into her teaching, and she was like substitute teaching. She didn't have a steady teaching job. And then she went in. Oh, there it is. She in 1982, and so she'd been wearing the headdress and the long stuff for several years until 1984, when she was called in, and they said for a substitute job, and they said she couldn't substitute with the headdress and garb on. However, she'd been doing it in 1982 and 1983 with no incident, and suddenly 2 years later they're telling her she can't do it. And so she filed this claim saying that it was a Title VII issue. But and going back to what you said, Sarah, about undue burden on the district, they said that the court said that they could not accommodate her because of the undue burden that it would place on them, because had the school allowed her to wear it, then they would have been liable for prosecution against the Pennsylvania statute, which the court said that was justifications under the undue burden piece, which I thought was interesting, because I was trying to figure out, well, what's undue burden? How is this going to be undue burden? And they later explained that because allowing her to wear that would cause the children to ask questions about her religion, and then she would explain her religion, and that could get them down other paths, then that would appear like the school was okaying that religion, and that was considered undue, which goes against the Establishment Clause and the First Amendment of the Constitution. And so that kind of made me, that made it more understandable what was undue burden. And so basically, as long as it does not, how did they put it? As long as the teacher's appearance in religious garb leaves a conscious or unconscious impression among young people and their parents that the school endorses a particular religion, commitment of the person whom it has assigned the role of the public teacher. So it says, noting that offending dress communicated the student's adherence to a religion, this does not include dress that communicates an ambiguous message, like the occasional wearing of jewelry using common religious decorations such as a cross. So that's what the court said to her, that she didn't win her case. The school district won because it was undue harm on them.
Yeah, so I just went ahead and unmuted myself so all of us aren't garbled up. I actually noticed that too. So that was one of the things that I researched also. So thank you for bringing it up. And I thought it was kind of interesting that they said it was commonly known as Pennsylvania's garb statue. And what you're saying, it became public law in 1895. That they violated it. And I read recently that they have taken that out. And it said here, after a bench trial, the district court entered judgment in favor of the United States against the school board, ordering the board to make Riordan whole and enjoining it from giving any further effect of the garb statue. So, and this was just one of the sources, and it was from a legal organization. So I was kind of happy just to wrap up everything that you said, that, you know, it's not allowed anymore. There is also another case that I found, and kind of crazy, but it was still had to do with the Muslim faith, and it was Cooper versus Eugene School District in 1986. So in 1987, right after everything happened with her, that she was wearing white clothes and a white turban while teaching 6th and 8th grade classes. And she was actually suspended from teaching, and she reported the action to the superintendent. And so he, you know, went with the administrators. It actually went to the Supreme Court. And Justice Lind said that, one, the religious dress statute, when correctly interpreted, did not violate the state's guarantees of religious freedom or the First Amendment, that wearing religious dress and clothing that associated with or symbolic of religion while teaching may leave conscious or unconscious impression among young people and their parents, that the school endorses that particular religious commitment or person. I kind of thought that was much like our day. I'm not sure where y'all teach, but I teach in West ISD, so north of Waco, and small Czech community, either you're Baptist or you're Catholic, but I mean, many of us will wear a cross or cross earrings, a bracelet. Kids come with shirts that have crosses on them. We wear Christmas shirts. We wear Easter shirts. One thing that is kind of against some precedent, I mean, we pray at every football game. Yeah, it's student led, but the whole entire community prays. So I know it's different per district and what allows, but just being from, you know, from West and teaching there, I mean, we're all about religion, and, you know, no, we do not preach our own religion or teach our own religion. But when I found this case, I was kind of Yeah, that's right. We are allowed to do that as long as we're not preaching or trying to establish religion or press our views onto someone else. So I was kind of excited about that. And it also stated in the case that you can't disqualify someone from teaching for that. I was like, well, if I change districts or when I get my principalship, I wouldn't want someone to tell me that I couldn't wear a certain shirt around Christmas, so to say. And I know you have to watch out where you teach and all that good stuff, but I'm like, that's interesting. So I'll put myself on mute now so y'all can talk.
Now, I just find that very interesting because looking over the cases and this information on religion, I often wonder about, Christmas attire, if that's allowed or not. And then you were talking about West being a smaller school district and that being allowed. And I've worked in a couple of different school districts at Waco ISD, which is really large, and a small school, Teague ISD, out in the country. And there is such a big difference. And I remember even attending a board meeting and going, okay, happy holidays. And, no, we say Merry Christmas here. So I just thought that was kind of interesting that you said that. And the information I found on the Christmas attire was just on that as well. It's kind of more like up to the school district, and as long as it's not disruptive or preaching on that. But I actually found a case on a teacher wearing a t-shirt way back when. I don't know if y'all remember, I'm sure you all remember, but remember the whole 2K, the year 2000, when computers were gonna like explode on, at midnight at 1999 when it rolls over. Well, there was a teacher at a school district that taught keyboarding, and during the school year 98-99, she actually wore a t-shirt that said Jesus 2000 with it said J2K on her shirt. And that case was called Downing versus West Haven Board of Education. And I found that really interesting because she was not allowed to wear that shirt. And that was actually a violation of, that separation between church and state. So, and she was claiming free speech, but that's why I kind of brought up that First Amendment to begin with, because it does kind of cross what is free speech, versus, are you promoting religion or showing your religion? Or, I mean, it's just kind of one of those things that kind of cross.
Well, that case was actually noted in, I found not an article, but a employee religious expression guide from, it says Texas Administrator Guide, put out by TASB. And that case was actually referenced in TASB as an example of dress that promotes religion, which is prohibited. And so it said that the employee cannot wear clothing that promotes a particular religion. And I guess because she's talking about Jesus, it said Jesus on there, then that promotes Christianity, which then would be promoting the Christian religion. But on here it did say, but there's a whole lot, it's about 9 or 10 pages on different, like praying with students, teaching classes, religion with other employees. But then they have a section about dress code. And it says it has to be neutral and generally applicable dress code restrictions are permitted. So rules that burden religion must be neutral and generally applicable. If an exception to the uniform policy is made for a secular purpose, a religious exemption is required. And they cited the case Fraternal Order of Police versus the City of Newark. It said that it was unconstitutional for the police department to require a Sunni Muslim to shave their beard, but then give the exception of not shaving your beard for a medical purpose. So if you're going to give it for one, you have to give it to the other, is what I was understanding. And then it said target dress code restrictions may be permitted if dress causes an undue burden, which would then go back to the Muslim cases that we were talking about. But none of those really said anything about what you are allowed to wear. It's just that it can't promote a religion and it can't be undue burden on the school district. But I thought there were some really interesting things in there. And if I remember, I'll try to send you all that link so you have that. But I thought, well, I wonder what my school district has in their local policy for religious dress. And I didn't find anything about religious dress, but they have religious symbols and religious teaching about religion, religious texts, religious music, and religion in student works. The symbol part, I was assuming was going to talk about like the earrings and things like that. But it says religious symbols may be displayed as a teaching aid. Their display shall be temporary and limited to the specific teaching activity. Such displays shall not be permitted for devotional purposes. So if we use it, we have to be for teaching aids. It can't be just something we have in our room because it's something for us, which I thought was interesting.
So that is very interesting. So I will actually have to look at my school district's policy on that. So just that kind of made me think of something. We do Christmas around the world at our school. And it's not Christmas around the world. Okay, excuse me. It's holidays around the world. And so we have China, Japan, Sweden, Germany, Switzerland, the US, Australia. I mean, we do it all, and they travel to stations that, the week before Christmas. And it's just 30 minutes in each room, and they'll switch, throughout their grade levels. And so that's kind of interesting. You're talking about the teaching aids. So something like that would be appropriate, so to say. But I guess I need to look at that. I did in our school handbook, it does address, because our student employee handbook for dress code does address like wearing symbols and what is appropriate and what's not. And I found the site or the case, the United States Board versus Board of Education for School District of Philadelphia. And the Nickel versus Aaron Elementary Unit, 28,268 Federal Supreme Court, that granting instructional assistant preliminary injunction to continue openly wearing a cross on a necklace. So I guess those two cases kind of opened up the way that we're allowed to, whether you're Jewish and you want to wear a Star of David, or you're Christian and want to wear a, cross, or Catholic and want to wear a rosary around your neck, that is permittable. I also found a case, I'm trying to find it now, where it was a student who wore a rosary around his neck. And there was never a problem of it. They had done it for a couple months. And then all of a sudden, he was told that he couldn't wear it anymore due to it starting to be, oh, here it is. It was in our textbooks. It was actually New Caney ISD, which is here in Texas, of course, since it's in our textbook. But the rosary started being gang related. So I guess different gangs are wearing it. And he was wearing it at school, which I know we're talking about educators, but on the establishment clause, it states us both. And so both, I guess, teachers, no one, and students mainly could wear rosary beads outside of their shirts. And they said that applying the material and substantial disruption and interference from the Desmony case, that if it would cause outbursts, then, that is prohibiting the correct operation of a school district. You can't operate a school if you're having these different outbursts from gangs. So that kind of brings us back to what you mentioned in the beginning, the First Amendment, that, you know, we do as teachers have that freedom of speech, but if it's materially or substantially interfering with an operation of a school or the rights of others, then, you know, it does then become unconstitutional. And just thinking about that, I mean, that seems to be a very fine line for me, you know, like, and obviously the courts too, is you would have to look at each circumstance and decide, you know, what side of the line are we on. And I know Supreme Court doesn't hear everything anymore, and it was given to the states, and the states give it to the local school board, but you would really have to think about and kind of ask the whole community as a whole, what do y'all think? Like, build a committee and all of y'all meet to decide those things. You know, as an administrator, just thinking on that side of it, you know, you can't really tell a kid, you know, that's causing a disruption when, I mean, is it just disrupting one person that could ignore it? Because that won't affect the operation. But if it was the majority of students, you know, that's something that we're going to have a tough time handling, I feel, you know, if we have to come into contact with something like that. I'll take myself off mute real quick.
Yeah, I mean, I found that very interesting too. And another thing I found too is like a lot of school districts will actually put up Christmas trees and add ornaments. And I mean, and yet that seems okay. And again, it's kind of what you were saying earlier, as long as it's not becoming disruptive or you're not offending anyone. But then it always takes just one person. And you kind of mentioned, you know, having like a committee or an organizational group, maybe determining if it's right or if it should be allowed or, you know, or offending someone. But then again, like I was mentioning, it takes one. I mean, you could have a whole school for something, but one person not, and then it kind of affects everything. It doesn't seem fair, but I think the courts always look at it as just that one individual. So I just thought that was interesting. I'll mute.
I think it also depends on your size, because it's like Marlin is small, just like West is, and you know, we see. I think the things that we see in a smaller district are not the same as what we would see in a larger district, like in Waco and the bigger schools that have tons of kids. And what we're allowed to do is probably a little bit more, we have a little bit more freedom, wiggle room than the bigger districts, because we're in the community and the people see us, and so we go to church with them, they see us in the community, they see us at school, and you know, that there comes back that fine line. You know, am I the teacher in the school district where I have no, there's that line that I can't step on whenever I'm talking about this? Or am I a citizen out here where I get to talk about this? And sometimes that gets a little blurry, and there's been a couple of times that even I myself have gone, ooh, I wonder if I've stepped over that line, or, you know, because when you're teaching and you want to talk about, like Sarah said, holidays around the world, and the kids ask questions, and you know, you investigate those things, but then they start asking you questions about them, like, well, what about Jesus, and what about this, and what about that, and the different cultures in those pieces. Then it's kind of like I'm that role model, but they also know that I'm in church. So could that become an issue where it now looks like I am, what do they call it? Not really pushing religion, but that's not the word I'm looking for. But you know, am I putting an oppression on them without realizing I'm putting an oppression on them? You know, and that's kind of where the teaching part of it comes in. That always kind of makes you wonder how that's going. If someone walked by my room and they heard me say da da da, what? And that kind of has always in the back of my mind, made me wonder. But I've found that being in Marlin, and it sounds like in West too, we have a little bit more leeway than some of the bigger districts, which I like, because being with people knowing who you are, it's nice. They know where you're heading. They don't assume you're doing something wrong just because you're going down this track. Does that make sense?
So I agree with you, and I guess I can talk about the other side of the coin a little bit, much like you, Cindy, that I taught in Willis ISD, which is north of Conroe and south of Huntsville. I don't want to say North Houston because it's not in Houston, but down near that region. And I mean, there was 5 elementary schools, and I mean, it's a large district. And we didn't have as much teachers that would wear a cross on their shirt, or not that it said Jesus or anything, just a simple cross, and you've seen them, like the cutesy shirts on the back that have like this little itty bitty cross. They would not wear it. Honestly, I really didn't see too many crosses in general, because we had Jehovah's Witnesses, we had Mormons at the school, we had Muslims at the school, students from just different countries in general that just came there. And so you would not want to offend them or make them feel any different just because they're in the school district. So I do have a cross that my grandma gave me, and I wore it forever. And so I would wear it, but I would just put it under my shirt. Not a big deal. And I still have it to the day, but the chain broke the other day, so I'm not wearing it right now. But teachers, Misty, you said that, we're a role model. Like, when we're administrator, I feel that we're going to be an even bigger role model, because, we'll be the assistant principal or the principal. And we really have to think about, how our kids feel, and like we've all said, we're not trying to, push a certain religion or preach a certain religion or anything like that. But just, we have to consider all those feelings. I mean, honestly, about everything, because we would never want to get that parent in our office that is like, well, half of you wear crosses, and my student just came, to this district, and we're Muslim, and I'm really offended by that. I wouldn't want to have to deal with that, but I know that we will have to. And, we have precedent behind us that says we can, wear a cross or wear a bracelet. I know you can have like a little cross by your computer on your desk, and that's okay, because that's in your, but I think you really have to be cognizant of where you teach, who your student body is. I mean, even for that, who your partner teachers are, or the teachers in your school, because I mean, you don't want to create, an ill relationship when something like that could be easily avoided. So I'll put myself on mute.
Yeah, I mean, I think like in larger school districts, they have to have so many rules like that. But a lot of things that I was reading, and I didn't necessarily look into all the cases, but it was stating something that Misty and I think both you said earlier too, Sarah, and that is, you can teach like objects, symbolic objects, but they should not be displayed on your desk, because you could offend someone. So I find that interesting that that it's allowed at your school district. But again, I'm not surprised, because it is that smaller school district. So I work a lot at another smaller school district, Wortham ISD. I'm not sure if you all know where that is, but it's out near Teague, near Mejia, and I love going there. Just it's just a warm, caring place, and but and it's completely different. So I understand, going back to what you were saying, like with Houston and you know, just you have to kind of be respectful of those people that attend your school, that go to your school, and you want to make them feel comfortable and not to offend. So, and if everybody, like in West, feels the same way, if the community that feels that way, then you have the freedom of doing that. And now I'll put you on mute, and I think our time is almost up, right?
There's been, you know, we've had announcements before that even brought in like biblical scenarios, and there's times I'd go, did I just hear what I just heard? But at the same time, if you look at like Tasby, you can teach the Bible as a literary, use the Bible as a literary device. So thinking back by those announcements, I'm wondering if that wasn't like being used for character development, or that was the thought or the purpose. But I often wondered what would happen if someone came in and heard, you know, Moses in the Bible, da 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 da, and I'm like, how much trouble would that person be in had someone come in who was not okay with this or didn't understand where the message was going. But I like that we're in a smaller district, because I couldn't imagine what would have happened in a larger district had that happened. But that's some of the things that kind of I've thought about as reading these cases and the Tasby stuff and talking with you ladies, is that announcement came to my head, and I was like, oh my goodness, I wonder what would have happened had someone walked in as that announcement was being made about Moses in the Bible, you know? Oh my goodness. And they say you can't use ignorance of the law as a justification.
So I guess just to wrap it all up, I feel like we've discussed everything we could, and you know, a little bit more than that, which, you know, I'm very thankful of, because just talking to other people and hearing their opinions, honestly, through this course, I have learned immensely, and I'm like, I'm keeping this Texas law book, because I will definitely be looking all this precedent up, because I mean, my eyes have truly been opened on those fine lines, and what would we do without all this precedent? You know, where would we be without having all this knowledge? And, you know, I'm very grateful that, you know, I'm allowed to wear a cross, and that I do have rights too. But in the end, you know, as educators, administrators, anyone that works for the district as a whole, we're there for the kids, and we're going to make sure that they're comfortable even before ourselves. And, you know, I think if you're meant to do this job, which, you know, both of y'all are, obviously, if we're going to grad school for it, that it's those kids above all else. So, you know, they have the rights to religion just as we do, but I would never, you know, put my religion above theirs. You know, I just tuck my cross in my shirt like I did in Willis and keep on teaching what I need to teach. So, is there any last thoughts y'all want to add, or?
No, I'm good. I thought it was a great discussion. It was nice meeting you both and hearing your stories.
You too. Okay, well, I'll go ahead and end the broadcast, and y'all have a lovely rest of your evening.
You too. Bye.
Okay, bye.